It's the 6th of May, and like the rebels we are, we've just mowed the lawn. But don't worry, we've got another 19.5 acres of wild meadow and grassy areas full of wildflowers and insects. So let's go for a walk. So this is out into the park area, just outside the garden. We'll come back into the bottom of here later, but here we've got a lot of wild areas, a lot of walnuts, cherries, a lot of plants that we've planted, but also a lot, oh that's Cara over there doing a bit of clearing up after my mowing. So we do tend to manage this area, if only to create paths to allow us to get through the wilderness to see all the habitats. This through the white border is the orchard. Not a very successful orchard, but a few fruit trees in there. I don't know if you can pick it up on the sound, but this hawthorn is just heaving with insects, bees and flies and so on. Huge numbers of insects. And here we are in the meadow. There are chestnut trees along the top boundary, and we believe that they're several hundred years old, because I think I can actually see those actual trees on the 1805 Napoleonic charts. So one of the Limousin chestnut tree preservation societies is coming round to measure them and register them on their register of chestnut trees. Unfortunately, the one on the end is looking a bit sorry for itself, because we had a little bit of a fire, and the fire got hold of the last tree in the row and caused some havoc. But this is our wildflower meadow. It's essentially an organic meadow, for no other reason than the farmer who used to farm it couldn't afford chemicals. So basically it's a pretty diverse wildflower mix, which has a very yellow buttercuppy kind of flavour at the moment. There's lots of plantains and sorrels out there. So there's quite a lot of variety already. Is that some kind of speedwell or something? We've got lots of white clover, red clover. So a good variation, good diversity, and this will evolve over the coming few weeks and months. I can't remember the name of this particular plant here, but this one is going to leap into colour with purple flowers. It's dark, I can't remember what it's called, hawkbit or something like that. But that's going to give us a lot of pink and purple. We've got one or two orchids here, a couple of early purples possibly on the left, and a couple of burnt orchids on the right here, but not very many. You may have seen my previous video from the field across the road, which is absolutely full of orchids, which are just going over now. We're hoping, you can see some of them in the bank there on the other side of the road. We're hoping those orchids are going to make their way over to this part of the land, into our meadow. And the wonderful thing, I mean, this is our dog walk route around the field. So Cara does the morning walk, and we both do the evening walk, mainly because I don't like getting out of bed. So we get to see this once or twice a day, nearly every day. and see how it evolves, because the flowers change each week, and as the flowers change, the butterflies change. There's not a great many out here at the moment, but this will be awash with butterflies soon. Down in this area as well, we tend to get a lot of yellow rattle, which I understand is difficult to take hold. But there's a lot of yellow rattle in here. It hasn't come through yet, I don't see any yet, but I thought I'd do this walk through just to get a feeling for what is here. And then I'll come through in a couple of weeks' time and we'll just see how different it is. I'll keep going on down to the bottom of the hill. In fact, this natural amphitheatre here, this is always somewhere that I imagined we would have our own little pyramid stage when we run a music festival. But it's something we've never got round to. That is the railway just there, and we have a tunnel going under the railway, and that goes through into our lower 10-acre field which runs down to the river. So that's the floodplain field, which is all natural as well. So that's not farmed or grazed anymore. Now we come back into the bottom of the park. And this is the area you may have seen in a previous video, which I used to cut. I used to mow this whole area. And what happens is, of course, that the oak trees would naturally seed, and I would come through with a mower and cut them all off. And when I stopped cutting, of course, what we had then are an awful lot of oak trees with very well developed root systems, which in a matter of just 2 or 3 years are turning into a veritable oak. Not just oak, mainly oak forest, but there's some cherries in there as well. You can see quite a few hazels there in the background. So this is very quickly, oh, there's another cherry there I haven't noticed before. It's very quickly going to turn into a pretty spectacular forest. There must be an average of 2 or 3 oaks per square metre in there, so it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves and which ones get to the light and which ones don't. But it's interesting to see as well the different colours of green and just how much more advanced some of these oaks are. And while we're here, we can just see this fence line as well. Now that literally was just a fence when we first arrived, with absolutely no vegetation, but we stopped the farmer from clearing it, and now it's a hedge of 30 foot tall oaks, mainly oaks, the occasional hawthorn, a bit of wild cherry in there occasionally. And that's our main walnut tree, which needs some caring, because it didn't produce much this year. In fact, the walnut tree behind it, which has fallen over, produced several kilograms of walnuts. This is the bramble area, which I've cut back a bit because it was getting out of hand, but we keep a lot of brambles here under control. Good habitat, good food source. And this area, still lots and lots of oak trees. But also this area is thick with apple mint. So when you do come through with a mower on the path, or walk through and brush up against it, you get an amazing aroma. And you can see from here, up over the top, there's the house. And there's the parking space for the caravan. So if you want to come and stay, you're welcome to come and stay in the caravan. That's where you'll be. Several pieces of feature farm machinery, We've left around the place where the farmers parked it, and then back into the shade here. We're walking through to the opposite end of the park and the pêcherie. So this is an ancient fish pond, basically, which we've tried to reinstate rather unsuccessfully. We haven't managed to seal it. It's actually got 2 springs in the base, so it's a spring-fed pond. But at the moment, it's kind of leaking out as fast as it's filling up. But that's about 2 feet deep in there, but it ought to be 3 or 4 feet deep, really. We have populated it with a few wildflowers, but you can see it doesn't really need too much help. And we have been introducing things like pulmonaria down here, and they've gone crazy. So there's lots of pulmonaria spreading through the undergrowth here as well. But this pêcherie, we believe, is the sort of food source for the chateau, because this pêcherie is also marked on the 1805 Napoleonic charts. As we come around the circuit, that's our gate through the next door's park, which is the chateau. So the chateau is up to the left. But this is all we can see here. An awful lot of pig nuts. And you can see as well the ground looks slightly disturbed. It's because in a few weeks' time there'll be a herd of, is it a herd? Of wild boar up here who will completely turn this over and eat half the pig nuts. But in doing so, they effectively replant all the rest of the pig nuts. If we're lucky, we'll be able to dig up a few and use them in the stir fry, but typically the wild boar get most of them. But that's our path down to our riverside walk and to the walk through the bottom field. So as you can see, I don't think it's too much of a dilemma that we've mowed the back garden, and the main reason we've mowed the back garden is to try and reduce the snake habitat, because that's where the dogs spend most of their time, and we've already had 2 dogs bitten by snakes, so we prefer to try and minimise that particular risk. So there you go, that's our park and our meadow leading back up to the house, and that's what we're fortunate enough to be able to walk round every day. So I think it's about time now. Go back to the house, get a drink and cut Cara's birthday cake.